Max Porterfield, CEO of Callinex Mines. This interview is going to, we really want to intro you and get to know you to our community. But if you're interested in his company, we're going to be doing a full overview with him on February 15th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our events platform. So I know we're looking forward to that. But,
likewise.
Yeah. But for today, we're going to get to know Max. And so who is this guy here?
This is Shlomo. He's the newest member of my family. Came about on a trip to South Texas. And then he moved up to Canada shortly thereafter. So
yeah,
I had lost a dog who came before Shlomo named Sadie last year, and glad to have him. He's very well behaved for the most part.
Yeah, we're a dog family. I can't imagine life without a dog. So is he going to be okay for the drive? We're good?
Yeah, for the most part. He's not going to get sick.
All right. Yeah, like my dog. Okay, so Max, it's funny you mentioned Texas. You're from Texas, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm from San Antonio. Yeah.
So why don't we start there? I think you're 39.
39. Yeah, I'll be 40 in March.
The big
it's coming
40.
around the corner. Yeah, it's actually been my birthday's closely aligned with when I actually joined Callinex. So it's been 10 years with the current company, and then 12 years in Canada.
How did you end up here?
Unique that you asked that. I actually started off my career at a boutique investment firm down in South Texas called U.S. Global Investors under Frank Holmes, who was the CIO and CEO of the company and still is.
Mm-hmm. I've interviewed Frank.
Okay, yes. Yeah. So Frank was my first boss, a mentor to me.
Yeah.
And so through that, I mean, you learn quite a bit when you're a smaller organization than some of these big conglomerates or giant organizations where you're just a number in a big pool of people.
Yeah.
So there I really got to spend a bunch of time with the investment team as well as doing institutional sales, and ultimately, got to meet a lot of the companies that, the funds were invested in. Right. So it was more from the buy side and kind of being an organization that looks and evaluates exploration companies and resource companies, and then ultimately transitioned that when I had an opportunity to visit Vancouver early in my career, and kind of always had it as a backdrop of a place that would be pretty to live in and a healthy place for me longer term, and ultimately a career opportunity came that way. Mm-hmm. That led me here, and then one thing led to another, and next thing you know, we're looking for copper in Manitoba, and that was how the journey of life kind of goes, I guess.
So where did you go to school? Texas Tech?
Yeah, I have an undergrad in Texas Tech University, marketing and management, and then I actually was in the process of getting my master's with the concentration in finance, but I chose the life experience and the mentorship, kind of approach, and that's paid off dividends. Always really surrounding myself with the best people, whether it was working with the group at U.S. Global, really the heyday of their success, and then jumping over on the corporate side, working with another entrepreneur that's been very successful in the capital markets and raising a bunch of money and growing a business. And then ultimately, when I took over the company I'm with right now, getting to learn from the likes of Mike Maslowski, who's a member of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, and that experience has paid dividends both from obviously catching up on the technical side of the things, but they've also all been successful entrepreneurs, right, in the resource space.
So going back to Texas and your upbringing, I mean, what other interests did you have? Like, did you play sports, or what do you do?
Well, I think as a kid, I was probably more an eccentric person in general, but I did have an affinity for rocks. I had a rock collection. I was always into space, exploration of space. I was into rocketry. We communicated with astronauts in space in the program that I was in, and then I also had an affinity for the stock market at a pretty young age.
I'm not surprised.
So it kind of all came together ultimately, and fell into really a perfect career where, yes, it's very challenging, certainly, particularly when you go through a cyclical business like the commodity cycle, but very rewarding. I'm not exploring space per se, but we're certainly exploring below the Earth's crust, and the excitement's there.
So Max, what other interest did you have growing up?
Oh, I was a pretty eccentric kid, like many others, and actually unique that you asked that. I always kind of look and see what children like really before the age of 8 years old, and do they gravitate towards that in their adulthood. But as a child, a very young child, I was very into rocks. I actually had a treasure chest that I put all my things I collected and found in. I also had an affinity for space exploration. I was in multiple rocketry programs, designing model rockets to shoot off. Able to communicate with the astronauts on a project that we did after school. So those type of things, which, as I matured and kind of looked at my adult life and the things that I do for a living, I'm very blessed in many ways that I get to do something that I'm really passionate about. Might not necessarily, be an astronaut in space, but I'm definitely exploring in different ways. Still have the affinity for rocks, of course. And, that kind of coupled with another kind of interest of mine, as I matured and was a bit older in the stock market, kind of, I think I found my place, exploring for rocks of value to help a bunch of people. And then doing so within the capital markets kind of is a blend of all that together. So it's an exciting challenge, volatile business, but I don't think I'd have it any other way.
I'm going to get into the capital markets and you as an investor privately, but I got to ask you about like SpaceX and Tesla and Elon. Are you a fan of Elon? Have you been at Tesla or space? Well, actually, you can't invest in SpaceX yet. I think that's private. Have you invested in Tesla?
No, I haven't invested in Tesla. I don't invest in many things, but when I do so with a ton of conviction. But I do have a lot of respect for him as a visionary. Any of the visionaries in the world, they're a catalyst for change. Some people are going to push back against that. I think that's one of the kind of the challenges of a visionary is that you can conceive something, believe something so deeply, but not everybody else is.
Right.
And more often than not, at the very start of that process, nearly no one is other than yourself. So there's a tremendous amount of respect for people that have that gift, and then not only to have that gift or that kind of instinct or vision, but to then actually go out to create that, manifest it, and build it. There's a ton amount of respect for that. But no, I don't own a Tesla. I actually don't own an electric car. But I have a lot of respect for him or anybody else that's looking to better the world in their own way. In spite of many challenges that come before you.
So you said a word there, manifest. That's something a lot of entrepreneurs do. They manifest, whether they believe in that or not. If you hyper-focus, I believe that's a form of manifestation. Are you a spiritual guy?
Yeah, I'm a particularly spiritual person. I think that really my professional career and my life's journey is really aligned to my personal journey in life. So I'm quite fortunate of that. But yeah, no, I agree with you in the term manifesting. That's really, whether you're through meditation, through just focus, some people get to that state. You also talk about, you hear athletes discuss when they're kind of in the zone, so to speak, and that's where everything kind of slows down on the court or in the field. It's no different than, the sport of life, whether it be, beyond athletics, in business or what have you. You have got to visualize, really believe, and I really believe that, when you visualize the outcome that you want to achieve, and you can do that consistently, and you actually take your mind and body to the point where you're believing and experiencing that achievement occur before it's come to you.
That's right.
That's how you bring it to you. So I've gone through that process with exploration on numerous occasions. And when you do that, and you're really excited about a discovery that you haven't made yet, that can raise a couple of eyebrows from time to time, particularly with people that are very close to you, going, well, you haven't had that success here, so how can you, live the life to experience that? But that's really part of the creation process, at least for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. In my own life, I played competitive baseball, and for me, before games, of course, through repetition, hitting balls and pitching, but before games, to get into the zone, I would visualize my at-bats or
right.
pitching. And you can imagine a baseball coming at you back then. For me, it was probably 80 miles an hour, and then you got to maybe face a curveball. So you have to be able in your mind to slow down. You have to have the ability, but if you can visualize that feeling of hitting a baseball when you hit it at the right time at the right place and you hit a home run, you almost don't even feel the ball hitting the bat. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But so for me, visualizing that and manifesting it always helped me as a baseball player. And I'm glad you tied that into exploration, because essentially you're going around poking holes in the Earth's crust, and you're looking at mapping and geology and guessing at some point, well, there might be a lot of copper here. So you kind of have to manifest, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, trust me, I know if you don't believe, you're certainly not going to achieve. And as opposed to me visualizing hitting a baseball, I've certainly visualized hitting high-grade copper in the ground repetitively, and then the experience and the outcome that'll come after that success arrives. And with that process, there's also the mindset of timing. And when you look at timing and how timing kind of comes together in the world, it's based upon universal timing. So it's not necessarily when you want to hit that ball, but when is the right time for you to hit that ball, and what where are you in the game to visualize that success happening. And so for me, it took a long time to finally figure that all out. And once I started figuring that out, and that was kind of really when we rewrote the playbook for the company that I'm with, that's when all the success started happening. And then when you kind of look in terms of the successes occurring, they're occurring on the backdrop, and it couldn't have happened at a better time in many ways. Had it happened earlier, things wouldn't have been appreciative as much, the market be where it is. And so I'm a big believer of, you only believe a setback is a setback, like numerology 555. A setback is only a setback in that very given moment. And when you remove yourself from that moment, in the future, looking back, the lowest lows that I've ever had were really the stepping stones to be the biggest growth I've ever had personally and in my professional career. So again, I've visualized as far as receiving the Bill Dennis Award with our team, which is an award really for the biggest discovery in North America in any given year. And I do have a strong conviction that, that will manifest itself in reality. But that's just like kind of the sweetener, because the real, obviously, outcome they can achieve is the discoveries, and, the accolades are really just what they represent.
What was the first stock you ever bought?
Well, the first stock I ever bought was during the tech bubble. So that was, when I actually kind of realized I was quite good at that, I with some of the tech stocks during the Y2K. And then beyond that, I think, as in my own personal portfolio, kind of uniquely enough, the first stock I ever bought was when I took over my kind of bar mitzvah portfolio after I graduated college, was U.S. Global Investors, where I ultimately went on to work. And that stock was actually the number one performing stock on NASDAQ, and went from $3 to $76 in 12 months. And of course, I thought it was easy after that.
So you gave some of it back?
No, I actually didn't give any of it back. I sold along the way up, and that was significant for me. And then the second stock I actually owned, and then ultimately, eventually ended up working there, was what's now Uranium Energy Corp.
Oh yeah.
And I rode that through the first bull cycle in uranium.
Who's the CEO of that company?
Amir Adnani, as the CEO of UEC. And so then ultimately, years later, I think it was like 3.5, 4 years later, ultimately worked for UEC. And that's how I ended up in Vancouver. So I guess my biggest scores are companies I worked for. But yeah, those are some kind of two earlier ones that are tied to, my path, and are probably more recognizable to someone watching. They're kind of part of the conversation.
As I was waiting for you to come outside, I was looking at a chart of the TSX Venture Exchange as a whole, and the financings, and it's not a really good looking chart, my friend, over the last 5 years anyways. What's your take on, on Canada as a whole, and the markets, and not the economy, but the investing in Canadian companies? I mean, I know that we can get a little political with it, but overall, what's your take? Because when you look at investment in Canada over the last 5 years, it's down significantly.
Yeah, no, I think Canada as a whole is obviously a great country. I became a citizen in 2019, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities it's offered for me personally and professionally. I think that Canada, where it's really kind of eats the U.S.'s lunch, is being really, really early on some pretty big trends. I'd say mega trends. The Canadian capital markets and people really happen to be located in Vancouver and Toronto are pretty good at sniffing out those new trends, and the regulatory environment within Canada facilitates that in many ways in a positive way, whether it be being incubators for capitalizing exploration in mineral companies, which is obviously very key and hasn't been the kind of the highlight over the more recent period due to the kind of the performance that you mentioned, and that being a bulk of the TSX companies, but also being an environment to really build the marijuana industry into what it is. I don't think would happen in the speed and scale if it weren't for the Canadian capital markets. Mm-hmm. The same thing in the crypto space. Very early on, a lot of the infrastructure came out of the Canadian capital markets. And as you move forward for kind of the next kind of phase of health with psilocybin, MDMA, any of the kind of the psychedelics for healing, the mind and the body, that research and those public vehicles, they kind of leading that pathway are again in the Canadian capital markets. So I think the Canadian capital markets play a very key role in the world, probably a role that people don't appreciate so much.
It's a good perspective. I haven't heard that perspective, actually.
Yeah, it's a good place because we weren't going to get that kind of support, that kind of capital raise, certainly in the United States for some of those industries.
Yeah.
And so the Canadians, in many ways, kind of embraced that, and that created a lot of wealth in Canada. What they could have arguably gone to anywhere else
because
where
of
it was
the
respected.
access.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. That's
right.
Very true, especially in the cannabis space. I mean, a lot of U.S. companies had to list here because they couldn't have.
Right, and they were welcomed.
That's right.
In Canada, and the same is said. I mean, a lot of those companies that were being marijuana deals were failed, exploration stories in many ways. And is it right all the time? No. Good comes with the bad in any measure, but by and large, there is an opportunity. I mean, why I say that is that there was the kind of the early run in the marijuana cycle, then there was a real run in the marijuana cycle. So when they're early, they're very, very early.
Yeah.
But that infrastructure is there, and the infrastructure also adapts more quickly. And I don't know if that's just really a function, also the size of the population, allowing it to be more nimble than that of the United States, where you're managing 10 times the population.
You're dropping some good bombs here. You're going to give me some good reels. I like it. I've
thanks.
never heard that perspective, but it is very accurate, actually. So that chart that I'm looking at doesn't really tell the story. Well, it does in one sense, but it's still, you've made a good case why investing via Canada, Canada is a good platform to go public and raise money.
Yeah, well, yeah, and particularly for ventures that are in its infancy, and mega trends in their infancy. But ultimately, that's going to benefit all of Canada because Canadians will benefit from creating that wealth and having that done in markets they can participate in.
So it's Sunday, Max. You've had a busy week, doing everything you need to do for your company. What do you do to unwind and stay grounded and not burn out?
Yeah, well, that's balance is a big one of the things that I've had to learn in my life. So I do meditate pretty regularly. That's one of the things that's a constant.
Daily?
Yeah, daily.
How early in your day do you meditate? Because I've been looking into this, so I'm interested.
Well, it really varies, but I think the best time, scientifically, to meditate is right before you go to sleep or right after you wake up in the morning. Candidly, I just kind of pop in and do it whenever I feel like I need to do that. But I think that was the biggest thing for me. I think the misnomer on that too is that often people think they're doing it wrong and they really don't realize that they're not. So, but beyond that, I enjoy spending time at home with my family, my girlfriend, friends. Obviously, Shlomo, who's now taking a nap here with us today. And then on the hobbies front, I'm really avid into art, surrealism. Really, three of them kind of embodies the subconscious mind. And so oftentimes my collection that I have in art aligns with my life and things that might be going on in my life in any given moment. So that's a big part of me and the creative side of me, outside of business. But within exploration, you have to be creative. Exploration geologists in particular, you have to be optimistic, and then happen to be fortunate to live in a beautiful home now, and so started crabbing and staying on the water. I like to think that's because I'm a Pisces or something, a story I tell myself at least, but the water is always a very calming place for me, so
no doubt
spending time on the ocean and here in Vancouver kind of lends to that.
And your favorite place in the world?
Well, it depends for what, but I have a strong affinity for Japan
Really?
as a country. I think it's a very, very beautiful country as a whole. Just if you look at the topography and the scenery, and have a lot of respect for the Japanese culture. Their design is impeccable. The thought they put into detail, a very detail-oriented person. And they also have a lot of self-respect in many ways. Like, you can lose your wallet on a train in Japan and it'll come back.
Yeah.
And everything will be in your wallet.
Very safe
so
country.
There's a lot of honor, and respect. And I think that you lose your wallet in Canada and the United States somewhere, and it's gone in 5 minutes, and good luck to ever see it again, let alone have anything in it when you get it back, if you were to get it back. But it's also, Japan's the type of place you go to, and you literally could feel like you're on another planet. And so those are all things I appreciate, and something that you won't get anywhere else in the world, I don't think.
Food? What's your favorite food, man?
Well, I'm half Persian, so I'm partial to Persian food. That's what I grew up on. So if it's not Persian, I would say it's certainly going to be Japanese or maybe Italian. I also grew up in South Texas, so Tex-Mex and barbecue. So I eat everything.
So half Persian, what's the other half?
By bloodline, Eastern European. So quarter Russian by blood, and then the rest is kind of like a mix. Czech is part in there, and Polish is in there too, but half Persian and quarter Russian, and the rest is like kind of a bit of a mutt, unlike Shlomo here.
So you just went through VRIC. Let's end it here. What was the take, like, if you're comparing it to years prior and sediment and all your different conversations? I know you were very busy. You want to sort of give us your thoughts on that?
For the conference itself, I think that the sentiment or the people at the conference didn't match the overall market sentiment, which is unique. Usually, if everyone's thinking everything's down emotionally, you get there and everyone in person at the conference is down, or you see attendance being quite light. That was where the mismatch was in a very positive way. So it was very busy. I think there's acknowledgement of what the markets have been or what they will be. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity out there, and people see that opportunity. And I think that, while it's been a tough past 12 months or even longer in more cases than most, the future is quite bright, and there's going to be driven by a lot of fundamentals that support that. We are in an inflationary cycle, and it is dragging on the overall economy and certainly on people's pocketbooks. But ultimately, if you're positioned quite well, it could be an opportunity for significant wealth creation. So that's how I like the conference. It's all right. It's good.
Okay. Max, I think this has been a great interview. I don't think there's any content online where people can sort of get this sort of insights into who you are as a person outside of the business. And if there is, my apologies. I look forward to the webinar on February 15th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That'll be with Ashley West. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely gorgeous drive, by the way. I'm going to have to bring my family down here. I've had to sort of remind myself that I'm driving and doing an interview and try not to look over at the ocean. But all right, I hope you had fun, and we'll see everybody February 15th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There'll be a registration link in the description below, so check it out and register. Take care.